Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Simply Growing Food Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan. We've got a special episode for you guys this week. We sit down with another awesome local entrepreneur, Brittany, from Two Dogs Coffee. Those of you who have visited our stand know you can find their product on our shelf. And for those of you who don't know, you could also find it in the cup that I'm drinking right now. We're big fans. That's what's coming up on the SGF. Stay tuned. All right, and we are back with the Simply Growing Food Podcast. We are sitting down with Brittany from Two Dogs Coffee. Brittany, how's it going today?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, very good.
I'm doing good too.
There we go. Farmer Cass is here.
I am here, yes.
All right, so like I just kind of said, we don't even know what you did before the coffee and why you do the coffee. So why don't we start with that? What did you do before this?
Yeah, okay. Wow, bringing back my past life. So before we ever even got into coffee, Gwilym and I lived in New Hampshire, and I actually worked in healthcare for a long time. I originally wanted to go to school for nursing. I was in New Hampshire they call it an LNA, so it's a licensed nursing assistant. So I was an LNA for probably about 10 years right out of high school, and I worked in nursing homes, I worked in the hospital setting, I worked in home care, and going through all those processes made me realize that I did not want to be a nurse. But I really enjoyed being in healthcare, and I enjoyed healthcare management. So most of my career after that was in healthcare management in the home care specific industry. So the company that I worked for, we used to staff nurses and healthcare professionals for kids with disabilities and rare disorders. So my job was to hire recruiters, work with the families. I worked with a lot of the big hospitals in New England and would meet with the families, and we would work on finding staff for the kids to have nursing services in their home. So that is really what I did.
Wow.
Pretty much before, yeah.
It's a full-time gig.
It was, yeah. And I loved it. It was a really great job. But Gwilym and I met in 2016, I think, and we've just been really fast and furious since meeting. That's kind of our MO. So we met, we got the two dogs, Penny and Frankie. We bought a house, and we had our first son. And then fast forward a couple years, COVID hit, and that's really where coffee began for us.
Okay. Was it because you wanted to get kind of away from the medical industry or healthcare industry, or?
So when we first started, I was still in the healthcare industry. I had to step away from the operations management position with the home care company because having a son and just he had a lot of needs at the time, it just didn't fit our schedule. So I got into staffing and recruiting. So I was hiring travel nurses and travel physicians and stuff for a company out of New York. So I did that while we started the coffee stuff.
Wow.
But really what happened with us is we got an opportunity to move to Connecticut after Gwilym had been offered a job down here, in Rhode Island. And at the time we had just been roasting coffee just kind of for fun.
Sure.
During COVID, we couldn't go to coffee shops, and when I was in the staffing and recruiting world, I worked remote, so I would go to coffee shops a lot. And
right.
I loved working remote, but I hated working at home.
Yeah.
I didn't love being confined to the four walls of my house all the time, so I would often go to all the local coffee shops in New Hampshire, in southern New Hampshire, and I would work, and I just loved the atmosphere. Just being able to eavesdrop a little bit, hear about people's conversations, what's going on in their life, and then just the environment of a coffee shop was always really welcoming and warm. And I found that I was way more productive working at the coffee shop, which is interesting.
You liked it more.
I did, yeah. Well, I was caffeinated, I was focused, I was fed, all the things.
Yeah.
So I continued doing the staffing and recruiting until we moved to Connecticut and we had our second son. And at the time, we couldn't find any childcare because it was really difficult. We were kind of coming in like mid-COVID at that point. So we decided we were just going to focus on the roasting part of our business and, see where that went. And honestly, that was the best decision we ever made. It was a huge risk.
Yeah.
Gwillem having to take on like all the financial responsibilities of our family.
Yeah.
And me adjusting to becoming a stay-at-home mom was a lot, but being able to focus on the coffee business and meeting people like you guys and just growing our business from the roasting side really was game-changing for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow, such a great story.
Thank you.
How did you decide on the name? I mean, I know obviously you got the dogs, but like, what was we're gonna name the coffee company after our dogs?
Yeah, honestly, I'm trying to remember. So when we were in New Hampshire, we when Gwillem started the roasting, he was really into it. I was kind of like, okay, here we go, another hobby.
Yeah, this will die off in a year. Yeah.
When we first started dating, side note, we met on Match.com.
Nice.
So
Small plug.
if you're a single person
Yeah.
and you're unsure of some of the dating websites, I don't know, Match.com, it worked for us.
You know, I have an uncle that met his wife on Match.com.
Yeah.
And they've been together for over 20 years now.
Yep.
So.
Honestly, don't be afraid to get out there. It was a little scary at first, but hey, you know what? It worked.
It worked,
Yeah, wow.
So in his profile on Match.com, he's gonna hate me for saying this. His screen name was Big Adventure 85, and his like first line was like, "I'm a collector of hobbies. Like I collect hobbies." And so when the coffee roasting, piqued his interest, I was like, "Here we go, like another hobby. Let's see where this goes." And it stuck, and we both got interested in it, and that he really is the mastermind behind how amazing the coffee tastes. I have nothing to do with that.
Okay.
That's all him. But I was able to use kind of my resourceful skills in working with people from like healthcare. I got used to like networking and meeting people and kind of like just getting myself in places that I needed to be in from like a sales perspective. So I handle all of that from this part of the business. But going back to the name, when we were deciding, okay, are we really going to go after this and like try this as a small business? We kind of started to think about all the things that really encompassed us and kind of where we started. And outside of our relationship, our like commitment to each other, started with the dogs.
Right, it's like that was your first babies.
It was our first babies. They were our first babies, and the story of Penny and Frankie is really great. I wanted a dog. I lived in an apartment that said you could have dogs.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I really want to get a dog. We weren't living together yet. And I get these, I see this picture of this dog, and it was Penny, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. I really want her. And she was in a rescue. And I sent Gwillem the photos of the dogs that were in this litter. And he goes, oh, I really like the like black one. He's really handsome. Like he looks like a wolf. And so I was like, oh, they're so cute. And so I put a deposit down. And all of a sudden, like, I was like, okay, I'm getting these two dogs. And he didn't know.
I didn't know they came as a pair, too.
They did, yeah.
That's even sweeter.
Yep, they're brother and sister. Oh. They're from Mississippi. They're from a Humane Society rescue down there.
Cool.
I think it's Emily Johnson with that Humane Society had helped us get them. But they shipped them up from Mississippi, and we had to smuggle them into New Hampshire because New Hampshire has a law that if you get a rescue dog, you have to quarantine them for like 30 or 60 days, and you have to pay some hefty fee.
I'm sure, yeah.
And that's really, it's just a way for them to get more money out of these rescue companies.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it is.
Yeah.
And so Gwillem thought we were just going to meet them as like a meet and greet. And he had to go get them because I had work that day, and I was like, "Oh no, we're taking them home. They're ours now."
I like that.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, yeah, and then ultimately, my apartment did not allow dogs in my building, so then he had to have them for the beginning. So they were kind of like they've been along for the ride through our life over the last 8 years now.
Wow.
So when we were really picking a name, we really wanted to pay like respect to them and how they've been a part of our family and our life for so long, and they're amazing dogs.
Yeah.
And so we were like, we love coffee and we love our dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, we love our kids too, but we love our dogs.
They came after.
The kids are different. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
different. So that's kind of where Two Dogs Coffee came from.
Interesting.
Wow,
Oh, yeah.
I love that they came as a pair. That's so
Yeah.
cool. And how old were they when they were rescued?
They were 14 weeks.
Okay, so
Oh my God.
still
so they were still little.
young. Yeah.
They were actually like feral animals down in the
okay.
south. They lived on like the side of the road with their
Wow.
mom. There was
What
5 of
the
them,
heck?
but they lived like near a highway.
Okay.
So someone saw them,
Yeah.
and they were able. I think ultimately the mom had been hit by a car, and someone had found the puppies after the fact.
Yep.
So they were all rescued, the 5 of them. They were called the Hollywood pups. So Frank was Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And Penny originally was Marilyn Monroe because she has a beauty mark on her face. But
Oh.
we had to. I couldn't call her Marilyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
quite a mouthful for a dog name
Yeah.
too.
And it's not her personality.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She is not like Marilyn Monroe.
Right. That's funny. Interesting. Penny's better. Penny's better.
Penny
Yeah.
fits her
I
well.
love the
Yeah.
name Penny. I've always loved the name Penny.
I do too.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, maybe I'm naive. How do you even find coffee beans to like buy in bulk and then roast and sell? Like, how does that process work? Where did you like start sourcing them?
So our first set of roasting came from Amazon.
Okay.
Our first set of beans when Gwillem was learning and practicing and learning all about roasting and all the profiling and stuff like that, he ordered green beans from Amazon.
Wow.
Would not recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're practicing, it's a
Yeah.
great way to practice and you don't spend a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, we just did research on different distributors. So we used a company called Happy Mug for a while. Gwillem had joined a bunch of groups, and we learned more about like the different larger distributors. And then from there, we were able to kind of get interconnected within like the distributing business and understand like which distributors offer which type of coffee. There are some that offer more of that like, not commodity because they're still specialty, but they sell more on a larger scale to a bunch of different places. So the distributor that we work with does do some of that, but they also work with a lot of small farms.
Sure.
And a lot of those like micro lots and the smaller co-ops, which we really like because we can get access to some of the larger places like any of the Brazilian and Colombian coffee all kind of come from the same area. You pick your farms that you want. You know, you can kind of choose which farms, which grade coffee you want. But they also offer the micro lots and the smaller co-ops, which is good for us because then we can have access to that.
What is a micro lot?
A micro lot is like a much smaller farm.
Okay.
And they only offer a smaller amount of cherries.
Okay,
as you
sure,
call
sure.
them, and
Right, right.
when it first starts off, and so you only get a little bit, and it's only usually for a smaller season.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the co-ops are usually owned by multiple families
Okay.
who own pieces of land, and it's a bunch of land that they kind of like all manage together.
Okay. So it might be
yeah.
like, in comparison, I'm thinking of, our dairy industry in the area. A lot of them are, is that Cabot maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, and what's that other milk one that everybody gets? Mountain Dairy.
Mountain Dairy.
Mountain Dairy is a
Yeah.
cooperative with a bunch of
Yeah.
different dairy
Yeah,
farms.
right.
So kind of same kind of idea.
Yeah. So we had like a great example is there was a coffee bean that we got when we first started in one of our first farmers markets. We were able to release it. It was called we named it 4K, and we named it 4K because these beans or cherries, these plants were grown 4,000 feet above sea level.
Oh,
And
interesting.
they only had a small amount of these beans available.
Sure.
Okay.
And so we purchased those. It had to have been maybe 5 years ago. Yeah, because it was when we first started. We haven't been able to get those ones specifically since then. But those ones come back in season only every so often because they're much
Okay.
smaller. And depending on any climate changes or anything that they have, they might not be able to bring back the exact same varietal
Yeah.
for that. But
Okay.
they're much. They're just a little bit more sought after if you're really into specialty. They're a little bit more expensive, but like the flavor, this one specifically, was like out of this world.
Yeah. I know. I'm thinking like being so high up in elevation, that obviously must change some things.
Yeah. So where these beans were from was in an area that had a lot of like fruits
Okay.
and citrus plants. So when you think of like, I'm not a beer drinker anymore, but when I was, we really loved to drink like Treehouse juice bombs. Like they have some like the green or whatever. If you're into beer and IPAs, they have like juice bombs, and that's what it would remind me of with the coffee, is that like this was like a really fruity, juicy type of coffee, which sounds strange when you're like, oh, coffee, juicy, like fruity and citrusy. That seems strange, but it was incredible. We haven't been able to get it since then.
Okay.
So.
A special release.
It'll be super special someday when you do.
It will be. Yeah. Yeah.
So I heard, and maybe you can confirm this, when you buy from smaller micro lots, the cherries are only harvested when they're ripe instead of when like there's both. Like I heard that the bitterness from, let's say, large coffee, Folgers or whatever, comes from just harvesting, cropping right out all of the cherries, whether they're green or red or whatever, and then it gives it that really bitter taste that, well, we don't have anymore.
Yeah.
You know, is that true? Like smaller guys can make it a little bit more artisanal and focus on ripe cherries instead of the whole crop?
Yeah, the cherries make a big difference in how they're processed and how when they're picked, right? So you want to make sure they're picked at a certain time. That really depends on the flavoring too. The bitterness may come from the cherries being picked too soon, and also how they're processed. And then ultimately it depends on how it's roasted is really what will give you, and then how you brew it. Will give you you could buy our coffee and brew it incorrectly and have a really bitter coffee. But that's because if you don't know, if you're not brewing it properly or you're not grinding it properly with the brew method that you're doing, that will create that bitterness.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But and Gwillem knows a lot more about this than I do, but there are different grades of coffee. There's different levels, and that really depends on how when the farmers come in and they bring their lot of coffee to the table.
Sure.
They're looking and they're getting scored on their beans. So how the cherries, do they all look the same? Are they all about the same color? Are they all about the same size? Is there much variety within that lot? If there isn't, and it's a good lot, they'll get a good score and they'll get paid more for those cherries or the coffee beans that they're then selling to the distributors and importers.
So it's like they're graded, basically.
They're graded, yeah. So when we're looking at our coffee, I accidentally did buy one that was not the typical grade that we buy, and it wasn't bad. It was different, but what really was the issue is that there's not as much consistency in the beans, because when you roast it and you're looking at it after it's done being roasted, you don't want to have a lot of beans that have different colors. You want them all to look the same. And this one was a light roast. We actually didn't release it. We had a couple people try it who said they really liked it, so we're a little hesitant because for us it's not our our
flavor.
Typical, and we want to make sure everything is super consistent. So, I mean, the people that tried it, because we'll send it samples to, especially our light roast, our like consistent light roast drinkers, like we'll send them samples and be like, what do you think of this? Like,
try to get some real feedback.
We'll adjust the profile based off of that. But this specific one, the beans, they were just so inconsistent in color. Like some of the beans were more of a caramel color. So light roasts are super light. They're more of like a light caramel color. Okay. And then some of the beans were more of a white, like a light, not like a white, but like a much lighter caramel, like tan color. Noticeable. Okay. So unless you're picking out all those different colors, like the ones that aren't, uniform, it's going to create an inconsistent roast.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's good that you did accidentally do that, because you'll never question like, is it worth the money to get the grade we're getting, or you know, whatever. So,
right. And typically the higher the grade, the better the quality. Well, 100%. If it's a higher grade, it's better quality. So when we're looking at coffee and we're picking which green beans we want to purchase, we look at the grade, we look at how they were scored. Sure. So we always talk about, like, we only purchase coffee that's 85 or above from a score level, and that is what sets apart like a commodity coffee and a specialty coffee.
Okay.
Any specialty coffee is graded 80 or above.
Okay.
So any coffee that you get, and 90%, unless they're a specialty coffee roaster, they're not going to advertise what grade or what what number they're purchasing at.
Yeah.
Whereas like maybe some of the larger coffee chains are purchasing the commodity coffee, and those scores are probably in like the 70s, late 60s, 70s, whereas specialty coffee is 80 or above.
What makes a specialty roaster? Like, would you not call yourself a specialty roaster?
We personally would not call ourselves a specialty roaster if we weren't buying that grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you say you are a specialty?
Yes,
Okay.
we say we're a specialty small batch roaster because we do focus on buying the higher grade and the 85 or above when it comes to coffee scores.
Okay.
Is there any like legality with saying specialty roast, like there is with organic or humanely sourced?
With specialty, I don't know if there's any legality. I think for yourself, it's more of a moral thing, right? Like you can't call yourself a specialty coffee roaster if you don't even understand what specialty coffee is.
Right.
And that's understanding the scores and the grades and how it's processed and like really doing your due diligence and in learning the education behind it and understanding what makes specialty coffee versus non-specialty coffee. The organic piece though is definitely more of a legality piece. We get that question a lot too.
Yeah.
Is your coffee organic?
Right.
Yeah, and that's like a big thing for people, and I don't know about you guys in the farming industry, but for us, some of our coffee is actually organic, the beans that we buy, but we don't always we've never advertised that it's organic because most of the coffee that we do buy comes from the smaller farms, co-ops, micro lots, and that kind of stuff. And in the coffee industry, a lot of these farms that are smaller, they follow all the same practices as
by
organic.
Default.
Right.
But the certification is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And so really it's just a stamp of a price point.
Right.
I think. Personally, because you don't have to buy organic coffee to have really good quality coffee that doesn't have any pesticides and other stuff sprayed on it for the crops.
Yep.
It's really like kind of a sell and an advertise for people to say that it's organic. Now, I'm not against advertising organic because I do think there are people that really only want to buy organic, and that's totally fine. So we call ours organic because we're not going to put the organic stamp on it. We're not going to advertise that it is organic because they don't have the certifications to say that. But it's purely from a cost perspective. The organic certification is extremely expensive.
Right.
So ours are organic which means they follow the same practices. They don't add anything to their soil. They don't add anything to their crops. It's natural. It all grows naturally within the environment, and they process it. And so we can't call it organic, but we call it organic
Yeah.
Organic adjacent.
Yeah. I like that.
So what is the difference in pricing on like a wholesale? Like, is there like two times the cost to buy organic coffee beans than it would be to buy, grade A or 85 and above?
Sometimes. So we buy our beans 65 pounds at a time, mostly. We do have a couple of farms that we buy smaller amounts from, but the pricing on organic tends to be a little bit more expensive. Not so aggressively, but sometimes it depends on we really only touch the small surface of specialty coffee. So the beans that we buy are relatively affordable and allow us to keep our prices at an affordable price. But there are beans that are organic or higher specialty that the green bean before it's even roasted costs $10 to $12 a pound.
Wow. Okay.
A pound before roasted. Those coffees are being sold for $32 for an 8-ounce or a 10-ounce bag of coffee. And that coffee, I'll tell you, when I went to Seattle a couple months ago, I had one of those coffees. I had what's called a geisha, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
I want to be able to offer it at some point, but I have to we have to know that we have a market of people that would be interested in purchasing something like that, because the investment is a lot when you're buying, 65 plus pounds at $12 a pound.
Oh my goodness.
But the coffee is unreal.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good.
Wow.
Is it just super, super smooth and caffeinated, or what?
Super
what do you,
smooth.
Yeah.
The flavor is incredible. It's just a really. I can't even explain it. It's just an amazing cup of coffee.
Okay.
Interesting. Does it come from one specific spot in the world, or is it just like how it's roasted?
Yeah.
Or,
Some of them come from different parts, and then
Okay.
some of them it just depends on how they're handled. Yeah.
Okay. And going back to the Seattle thing, because I remember you going to Seattle and you did a class. Can you tell me a little bit, what was that class like?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, as you guys know, we're opening a coffee shop, Two Dogs Coffee Shop.
Can't wait.
In Danielson.
Can't wait.
Eventually, hopefully soon. And so, like I talked about, our past life, I was in healthcare. I've never worked in a coffee shop. I've never been a barista, nor has Gwillem. I've been a waitress and a bartender in the past, but not anything coffee related. So when we decided that the coffee shop was something we were going to be doing, we thought that it would make the most sense to have one of us go out and take a class. So there are a couple really great classes offered within the U.S., but the Seattle Barista Academy really had, for me, the best layout for what we needed. So it was a 5-day intense course of coffee shop management, coffee shop operations, and then barista training. Wow. And it was an incredible experience. I think I'd love to be able to offer it in the future to, our baristas that kind of hang around with us for a while, because it was a really cool experience. So they went through everything. I mean, they taught me about, how to manage all the finances, how to manage all your books. Wow. They give you resources on vendors to connect with. A lot of the people going into this aren't coffee roasters. Okay. So they had a lot of information on coffee roasters that you could use. They gave us a lot of information on how to manage your labor percentages and stuff like that. And so from that operational standpoint, it was amazing. And the resources that they gave us after were just worth the amount of money that we spent on it alone.
Wow.
But just learning the barista stuff. I mean, we have an espresso machine at home, but I've never been able to figure out how to foam the milk properly, ever. Yeah. And so we did so much there that I learned how to foam milk. I'm still practicing my latte art. Yeah. But they really taught us everything, and they brought us to a large coffee roaster in that area, and they went through all the history. They had us make our own coffee batch, roast our own batch while we were there.
Oh, that's cool.
With the roasters, and they took us to all different kinds of coffee shops to teach us about the different types of coffee shops, what you can offer, kind of looking at the customer service and that kind of stuff. So it was and as much as I'm not a Starbucks girly anymore, I used to be, they took us to the Starbucks Reserve in Seattle. And so if you're ever out there, I highly recommend going. It was an incredible environment. It had every type of brewing method that you could ever use. They had a coffee and spirits bar. They taught you how to make different types of recipes. They had their huge roasting facility there. It was an experience at the Starbucks Reserve in Seattle. It was incredible.
Wow. Is that where Starbucks kind of started?
So they do have their Starbucks. Yes, it is where Starbucks started. They do have their first location in I think it's called Pike's Place, down by the water in Seattle. So a lot of tourists go there. That's the original, the first one that they opened. But this is within Seattle, but it's a different location. It's kind of their showy Starbucks.
Yeah. They're
location.
Starbucks museum kind of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Starbucks museum.
Okay.
Really
and speaking of, you were saying all the different drip methods. I know when I go to artisan coffee spots, one of the options is drip coffee, and I'm not really versed with all the different,
Methods.
right. So I always think, okay, that's just your typical hot coffee. Is that like, is there anything special to the drip method, or that's regular?
Drip method is just your like classic, what most people are used to. You have a Mr. Coffee,
Okay.
or like something like that. Like
Yeah.
that, you're using a drip coffee. I personally love like just a classic drip coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
But that one is definitely your like everyday coffee for most people. Then you get into more of the like fancier brewing methods, like your espresso, which you can do with an espresso machine, or if you want to get into the espresso world and you don't want to spend a boatload of money on an espresso machine, you can get what's called an AeroPress.
Okay.
We have one of those. It's really cool, and you can make a single shot of espresso with it. It's like $40 or $50 on Amazon.
Okay.
Really cool. It uses high pressure. It's really simple to use, so you could get one of those. There's also the pour over method, which is a little bit of a different grind setting in your coffee, and it's a slow pour with the water, and it extracts the coffee slower, which gives you a better flavor. Any type of light roast, I always recommend doing in a pour over or something of that nature, because light roast needs more time to brew
Okay,
to really
to get
pull
that
out the great flavor.
Flavor. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you could do a light roast in a drip machine. It's a little sacrilegious, but yeah, it wouldn't come out as good.
Okay.
The coffee
Good
commandments.
to know.
Yeah.
What about a French press? Would that
Oh
be?
yeah, those are made. That's great for
Okay.
light roast too. Slow
Okay.
method. Think
Okay.
slow the time. So you're
Okay.
doing a coarser grind, and you're brewing it slower. You're pouring the water in, you're letting it sit for 5 minutes. So it gives the coffee that time to release everything and all the flavors. And the water isn't just pouring right through. Whereas in a drip, it just kind of like wets it,
And gets-
saturates
yeah.
it, and then like pours it through. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
What's the method with the sand? Have you seen
Oh,
this?
Turkish coffee.
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
I have never made it. I have
Okay.
like I found like a vintage Turkish like coffee pot thing that I have. It's
Yeah.
really cool. But
Yeah.
they like, my understanding of it is it's super hot sand, and they make an espresso in it, and they like move it around the sand with like a copper
Right.
cup of some sort, and it heats it up and like cooks it, and it's like a really potent cup
Yeah.
of coffee.
Okay. Cause,
Wow.
Yeah, because I know Turkish coffee is a really big thing.
And the
more in
grind
the
setting
cities
on a
and stuff
Turkish
too.
coffee is like super fine. It's almost like flour.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really fine.
And like I don't know, when I've gotten Turkish coffee before, they must add something to it that's sweet. Is that, or is that just the coffee itself?
Honestly, I've never had a Turkish
Oh, okay.
coffee.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's super fine and it's ground super fine, they probably do have to add some sort of sweetener to
Yeah.
it. But maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they put sugar right in there.
I'd love to try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
We gotta
seriously.
find a place to try it.
Yeah, I'm like, where does that even happen? If
Which-
not in Turkey.
Yeah.
Which before this episode, me and Dylan got a lesson because Brittany was kind enough to bring us macchiatos.
Oh, yes.
From Two Dogs.
That's right, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yes,
Yes.
and because I don't know, whenever I go places, sometimes I'm a little scared to try the different kinds of coffees. So can you tell us really quickly what is a macchiato?
Yeah. So a lot of people know the caramel iced macchiato because it's a like very popular Starbucks drink.
Okay.
And that will be probably a big seller at the coffee shop because everyone's used to it, and it's a really great cup of coffee, especially for like your summertime. If you want something a little sweet but not too sweet. So with a caramel iced macchiato, you're basically just putting a little vanilla in it. You're adding, so when you're making your coffee, you want to make sure that you're adding your flavor and your milk together before adding like any ice to it, because you'll get that homogeneous mixture with the flavor. So you'll have like a vanilla flavored milk, and then you add your ice, and then you add your if you want to make it like extra fancy, you can like add some like caramel drizzle around the edges, but that makes it more sweeter. So if you do order it at the coffee shop and you want it sweeter, just ask for the extra caramel drizzle on the cup.
Okay.
But then you put the ice in with the vanilla milk, and then you top it off with a double shot of espresso, and you drizzle caramel on top.
Wow.
So this is the ice version. You do the same thing with a hot cup of coffee.
Okay.
You can do a hot caramel latte or a hot caramel macchiato. but you would just omit the cold milk and you would foam it.
Okay.
And you would do kind of the same process.
So then, in comparison with a latte, it's really just how it's stacked. It's how it's made.
How it's stacked, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and how it's made. So if you wanted to do like a vanilla latte, the difference between a vanilla latte and like a caramel macchiato is really the method of how everything's put in. So when I got here, it was kind of like mixed together. But if you were to get the caramel macchiato right from my hands after I made it, you'd see the espresso on top and it droops down the side. So the coffee, it's like a white mixture with the ice, and then you have the espresso kind of like dripping down through it, and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
Whereas with a latte, it's all mixed together.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before I do it, is it sacrilege to mix coffees? Because I have some leftover Frank's blend from this morning.
Oh, you mix it however you want.
Is that's okay? It's not weird. Okay.
No.
If you were like, I'm putting this Dunkin' in here, we would be upset. But
you know what's funny?
I would just say, Dunkin', I don't hate on people that like that. We always say when people are like, oh, you have Starbucks or Dunkin's, I'm like, look, you know what you're going to get at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
You can't fault them. It's not great coffee, but every time you go, you're going to get the same thing.
Yeah.
90% of the time, it's going to taste what you expect it to taste like, and there is something to say about consistency.
Yeah.
And that's what people really look for. So if you're going to be consistently, like, average from a coffee tasting perspective, like then great, you're consistent. And I think that's really important.
You know what though? I was just thinking as we're talking about Starbucks, it's funny because America doesn't run on Dunkin'. Actually, Starbucks is everywhere. Dunkin', we have a friend. My sister's got a friend that lives in Cape Charles, Virginia. She's got to travel across the bridge to get to Virginia Beach because that's the only Dunkin' within like 100 miles from her. So there's no Dunkins in the South.
Yeah,
America does
everyone
not.
loves Starbucks, and
Yeah.
they have a great marketing. I mean, their whole thing is they kind of try to tap in, I think, into the specialty coffee, or they want people to think like their Sumatran is what Sumatran coffee tastes like.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we hear people say, well, I like a dark coffee or a Sumatran like a Starbucks.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not, but that's not like a
true.
It is, but it's a commodity Sumatran.
Right,
It's
okay.
different than a specialty Sumatran. You're going to get more of the actual Sumatran flavors, which is out of Indonesia, and that's like a lot of that like tobacco pipe kind of like taste to it. It's a smokier flavor.
Sure.
I was not always into Sumatrans, but the flavor that comes out of them is really great. So
Yeah.
Starbucks Sumatran is more of a commodity Sumatran. But if you want to have a true Sumatran,
Go to Two Dogs Coffee.
Go to Two Dogs Coffee.
Yeah.
Or buy from a specialty coffee roaster that focuses on that specialty.
Okay, and out of curiosity, what is your favorite roast?
I don't. Everyone asks me that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite.
Do you go through seasons?
I do, yeah. Well, so the Seattle Barista Academy, we did so much with coffee that I am just now like getting myself back into drinking coffee because we did so much. I like over coffeed myself there. But I don't know. It depends on the season. I really like a really delicious light roast.
Yeah.
It's more acidic, but the flavor is really good. Frank's blend is obviously incredible. That's our best seller.
It is incredible.
That was our first.
It's very good.
That was our first roast that we ever got that Gwilym ever roasted that was like really good, and it was a blend.
Yeah.
So that was our first Frank's blend, which is so funny. That's our best seller. Was our first roast.
Wow.
So what's the
roast.
blend? What do you mean when you say blend?
Yeah. So you'll see with our coffee, you will either see single origin or not single origin.
Okay.
So typically for us that means, are there two different beans mixed together or is it just one bean?
Okay.
So Frank's blend is a blend of Brazilian and Colombian coffee beans that we blend on a 50-50 ratio or whatever Gwilym's ratio is, and it's a blend of the two coffee beans roasted together. We've done a couple other blends. Our espresso is blends of a couple different countries, and then we have a lot of single origins which come from one location, one farm. So like our Coventry that we just re-released this year, that's a single origin Guatemalan coffee bean.
Interesting.
Okay.
What's the yellow bag you got?
The yellow bag is our Kimbada. That's a light roast out of Ethiopia.
We have not tried that one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. We only have a little bit left. and then we'll have a new light roast coming out.
Okay.
So the light roast we switch out every 3 to 4 months. We're not at capacity where we can store a ton of coffee. So, and light roast is more expensive. So you'll typically see our light roast sells for more because it costs us more money to buy those, because it's just a more popular coffee when it comes to specialty.
Okay.
So those are a little bit more expensive, but the Kambata and all of our light roasts always come out of Ethiopia.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one thing Brittany taught me previously, which our listeners might not know, light roast does not mean less caffeine.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Yep. And isn't it true that dark roast actually does mean less caffeine?
Dark roast does have less caffeine in comparison to light roast, yes.
Okay.
Because when you're roasting the coffee, your light roast is roasted at a much lower temperature in a
Okay.
shorter amount of time. So you're not roasting the caffeine out of the bean as
Okay.
much. So it's definitely more caffeinated than a dark roast coffee is.
Wow.
Whereas a dark roast is roasted at a much higher temperature and a longer roast time. So it's cooking the caffeine out of the bean, but gives it that more darker,
Richer
robust,
flavor.
rich
Okay.
flavor.
What a misconception.
I think it's a common misconception,
yeah,
you know?
it really is.
I did know the thing about the dark roast, but I had no idea about light roast. So
Yeah.
if you're looking to get a caffeine kick and you want to try something different, I would say go for a light roast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also one other big misconception that a lot of people have, and it's funny, it actually, we're on a couple of coffee pages, and it recently came up in a coffee group that we were in, and it was pretty surprising the amount of people that didn't know it, but also not surprising.
Yeah.
So cold brew is simply just the brew method. So you can actually have cold brew hot and it's really good. It's super smooth and it's way less acidic than a regular cup of coffee.
That's what I like about cold brew. Yeah.
And a lot of people think cold brew is just iced coffee, and it's not.
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
didn't
not.
know.
And it's a lot of people actually purchase. So we do a cold brew kit, our Frosty Franks. It's our Frank's blend that we put in, satchels, and there's some instructions so people can make their own cold brew at home. But basically what it does is it just slows down the brew method. So it's over a 24-hour period of time where the coffee is steeping and brewing almost like a tea.
Yeah.
And you're left with a concentrate. So with that concentrate, you, depending on how intense you like your coffee taste, you would do a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. I prefer the 3-to-1 ratio. So you do 1 part concentrate, 3 parts water.
Okay.
And that can be cold water if you want it iced, or hot water if you want it hot.
Oh, okay.
And for the people who have a hard time drinking coffee from an acidity standpoint,
Right.
cold brew is a great option because it has way less acidity.
Oh, I should tell my sister that because she can't do acidic stuff now.
Yep.
She's got something going on. I'm gonna have her. I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell her to try that. So it's really just because when you hear cold brew, I think okay, that's cold, but it's
Yep.
really just because it's brewed cold.
Brewed cold.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
How do you
Yeah.
offer that? You just say, like, would you like a hot cold brew? Or would you like a cold
Yeah,
cold
I guess
brew?
how would you?
Yeah.
Would you like that
We
cold
would probably
brew hot?
just, if someone wanted, if we probably won't advertise it,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna have the drip coffee option
Yeah.
as well. But I mean, we also want people to try things,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we might, in the beginning, talk about and really with the coffee shop, it's about teaching people about coffee.
Yeah.
Like we want people to come to our coffee shop and
Yeah.
buy the coffee and be a part of our community there, but we also want you to be able to buy our bags of coffee and go home and make your own coffee at home, because
Right.
it can be it's more affordable. I mean, when we got into the coffee, it was really because it was more affordable
Right.
to make our own coffee at home, and we're like, well, if we're making our own coffee, we might as well learn how to roast it.
Right.
And it's collecting hobbies. And we did, and we're really at the point now where we really are saving more money drinking our coffee at home.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah,
And
of course.
Stopping at the coffee shop.
And stopping at the
grabbing
coffee
one.
shop, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So like but we really want to educate people on that, because like we were just at the Putnam Farmers Market this weekend, and we were talking to people about the cold brew, and we were giving samples and letting people know like you can drink this cold, but it's really great hot too. And we were educating people on that, like, wow, I really didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so maybe they'll try a bag of our Frosty Franks, they'll bring it home and they'll make it at home themselves and see what they think.
I didn't. Well, I think I knew, but we haven't tried the Frosty's Franks yet, which we will have to.
We'll have to.
But I had this. I don't know. I bought it from TJ Maxx, a little jug, and it had the it almost looks like one of those jugs you get with the fruit infusion thing. So it's got the little coffee filter in the middle. It'd be so much easier to just put the little tea bag, the satchel in of coffee, and just do it overnight.
There's a I don't always love to buy from Amazon, but we all do.
Yep, it's true.
We all do. There is a cold brew kit you can buy, not the actual like brewing, not the actual beans, but the brewing setup. It's called like OXO Tot or something like that, and it's their like cold brew.
Okay.
It's really easy to use. You can just you don't even need like a mesh. You don't even need like the satchel or anything. It has like a screen, so you just put your grounds in it. You do have to do coarse grounds. You couldn't do like regular grounds. I would recommend that everyone that's into coffee buy a grinder.
Okay.
Way better.
Yeah.
But you can coarse grind it and make your own cold brew at home without having to deal with any of the extra like filters or anything like that. And I think it goes for like $49 or $50 for that.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
That's pretty.
And
affordable.
it makes a concentrate, and that lasts. We did have one person, shout out Jason Verno. He purchased our cold brew kit and tried it, and I don't think he knew it was a concentrate, and he like let it sit for a couple days and drank it straight. And I was like, so how long were you up for? Like 3 days?
Yeah.
Because it's a concentrate.
Yeah.
So you do have to mix it.
Right, so you're drinking like triple the amount you
Tri-
would.
triple.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
He was like, wow. I mean, he was like, it was good, but I was like up for a while. And
Zipping.
Yeah.
So
oh my
jittery.
gosh. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right. I wonder, could you? I guess if you're gonna make the concentrate, you could interchange it with like a latte kind of feel or something maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be good.
Yeah.
I had a question too, before I lose it again. Talking about the different, light roast, medium, dark roast. What is the difference as far as like, is that a different coffee plant or is it just harvested at a different time? How, what's the difference there?
So, with the plants, I think it depends on the area that they come from. I mean, you could do a Colombian as a light roast. It probably wouldn't taste as good.
Okay.
But you can do any roast, like any bean, as whatever you want to roast it at. Certain beans in certain areas take on a better flavor depending on how they're roasted.
Right. Okay. So it's just how long it's roasted and.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
I
I'm
was
not
just-
totally like educated
Okay.
on that part.
Yeah.
Guillermo could probably answer that one better, but my understanding is like you could do an Ethiopian coffee as a medium roast.
Right.
You probably wouldn't do it as a dark roast. You could, but it probably wouldn't taste as good. It wouldn't give
Okay.
you the same impact.
Huh.
Same with like Colombian coffee and Brazilian coffee is usually roasted at a medium dark roast, but you could probably try it as a light roast.
Yeah.
It might be really the flavor might not be as good though.
Interesting. So it's obviously dependent on the geographical location, like what's
Yeah.
in their soil, what's around, like you were saying.
The flavors.
Right, like the fruit
weather.
trees nearby. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just reading a Mother Earth News article, which I wanted to finish before this interview, but I didn't. And it was all about fermented coffee.
Yeah.
And there's like two main coffee plants in production, and it's like Arabica and
Robusta.
Robusta.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
I've been
Okay.
sitting here trying to think of it.
Yep.
And they were just kind of talking about it. Yeah, it's the soil, it's the weather, and it's like how it's harvested that really makes the difference.
Yep.
And then they were talking about fermented coffee. I had never heard of that. Have you heard of that?
Willem has recently been talking about it. I have heard about it. I don't know a whole lot about it, but they ferment it. Like you can ferment it with honey.
Yeah.
I think there are some areas in like Costa Rica that have some beans available that they do the fermented honey whatever processing or
Sure.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder what the benefit. When I think fermented anything, they say it's supposed to be fermented stuff's healthier for
Yeah.
you. I
Your
wonder if
gut
that's
They're
biome.
more
why.
expensive.
Yeah.
I do know
Right.
that.
I'm sure it
It
is.
takes
Yeah.
longer.
It
takes
always
longer
is.
to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
That was pretty interesting. I should have probably finished the article. I probably would have had more to ask you.
No,
but,
that's okay. Yeah, so Arabica and Robusta are like the two different types of coffee plants. And a lot of the times these farms don't actually drink any of their, they don't drink coffee that comes from the Arabica beans. That's what they sell because it's better quality.
Oh.
Whereas Robusta is considered a lower quality bean.
Huh.
And it's a lot more, I'd say, bolder. I tried my first Robusta when I was in Seattle. We tried everything.
Yeah.
And it was, actually, I didn't think it was that bad, but it was definitely a different flavor, like a different type of quality, but it was still really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's more of the like cheaper type of bean.
Is it more like a filler? Or would they call it a filler? No.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of the commodity coffee is a mix of Arabica and Robusta, but I know that's one thing they really talked about with us was that a lot of the farms, they don't drink the Arabica. They don't drink coffee with the Arabica beans. They only drink the Robusta because the Arabica is what gets sold to
what makes
all
them
the
money.
countries, and that's what makes them money.
That's funny.
Yep, they do sell Robusta, and you can buy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they only drink their Robusta.
Have you ever done like a run of just Robusta beans just to see?
I haven't. No,
Okay.
but the first time I had it was in Seattle, so
Yeah.
we could probably, and that's one thing too. Like we know what we like, and we've kind of become used to what we've been purchasing, what we've been buying. So sometimes when we buy something new, we're kind of like, I don't know if we love that, or that's not our favorite. But we've also been kind of drinking the same stuff over the last couple of years outside of like any of the seasonal things that we add in.
Right.
But if there's any like region that anyone's interested in trying, we do have a couple distributors where we can buy a smaller amount from, where we could try, like, hey, if someone wants to try something out of Kenya, or they want to try something out of Tanzania or something like that, we could try, people can always request, and we'll do our best to see, if that's something we could do.
Interesting. Is there a caffeine difference between the two plants? Do you know?
No.
No. Okay. So it's like.
It really just depends on your roasting profile.
Okay. So they're gonna be pretty much the same on that.
Yeah,
front.
it's just the flavors.
Got you.
Yeah, it's just the flavors that you're gonna get that'll be different.
Okay.
And can you clear up what humanely sourced means in this industry? What does that mean?
Yeah, so for us, we focus on, the organic
Right.
in trying to buy from really small farms, and where our money is being given mostly back to the farms so that they can have a livable wage. So fair trade, right, is super,
Right, okay,
honestly,
okay.
organic, like we talked about, is a whole other conversation. But really focusing on like the fair trade is really important, because these farmers, they're hand picking
Right.
most of these places,
Yeah.
especially like 90% of the farms that we buy from. They're hand picking every single bean, and it's families going out during the day, and they're hand picking all the beans out of the cherries, and they're doing a lot of work, and for them, they're getting a decent pay for what they're used to, but it's really important to buy from fair trade
Yeah.
distributors, and making sure that the farms are getting the money back in
Okay.
their pockets, because not only does it, one, feed their family or feed the co-op and provide them with what they need, but also if a lot of these farms want to be able to potentially invest into better processes or equipment that will help them, they can do that.
Okay.
There's one specific in Guatemala, so the Coventry. They are a women only produced farm.
Wow.
So that Coventry farmers market, Coventry roast is a farmers market special. We did it last year. It's a single origin out of Guatemala, and they basically, what's been going on with this area is that they're trying to invest money into these farms so that they can have livable wages and do their own thing. And so when we're looking at purchasing and we're seeing some of these initiatives that the distributors and the industry is trying to do, we'll try to focus on putting our money into those farms. So that's exactly why we've gone with that one out of Guatemala, because they're trying to help them get to a point where they can have a steady income as becoming a women-owned, women-produced coffee farm.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's a good mission.
Yeah. So fair trade, to sum it up, means the farms and the farmers itself. It's really going back to them. So okay.
Yeah.
The distributors have to get a certain cut right because
Yeah, they got to make
course,
a living
yeah.
too.
they have to have a living too. And another piece of that too is that a lot of these small farms, I mean, we want to get into this a little bit more. We did work a little bit direct with a farm directly, but we'd like to get more into out of working with a distributor and more into working direct with a farm. But there's a whole lot more when it comes. The farm has to know and be, certified to do all the importing through the FDA, and then as do we.
Okay.
And we are not at a point where we can do something like that. But that is something that when you're doing fair trade, those are things that help the farms be able to offer that. They can invest a little bit more money into being able to do their own importing or exporting for them
Yeah.
Right.
and importing for us.
Okay.
So it's really important that when you buy coffee, that you are supporting fair trade.
Okay.
Because that's super important. All the money, not all of it, but most of it goes back to them. They're getting paid a fair wage
Yeah.
for their work and their coffee.
I want to point out, I didn't mean to say humanely sourced earlier. I was thinking of like more of what our side of things. They say humanely sourced in reference to meat.
Oh yeah.
So I meant
I knew
fair
what you
trade.
meant.
I meant fair trade.
I
For
knew
those
what
of
you
you
meant.
listening, I just got confused.
I guess it's still
No
humanely
coffee farmers were
sourced.
harmed.
Yeah,
Yes,
right, yeah.
But yeah, fair trade is really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to turn it a little bit to still in coffee, but going from having a 9-to-5 kind of into an entrepreneurial role. What was that learning curve like for you?
Oh, it's still a curve.
Right.
I've actually been thinking a lot about becoming an entrepreneur and, us starting this business and kind of taking the risk, right? We all have this dream, the American dream,
Right.
Yeah.
that we can, make a living for ourselves and live this life the way that we want to. And right now we're not really in that place, from an economy standpoint
Yeah.
and where, the finances and stuff are. But for us, being able to provide for our family and give our kids a potential opportunity has been really important. So taking the risk was kind of just what we did. And coming to Connecticut has been, honestly, besides the taxes, it's been amazing. And for me, from a learning curve perspective, it's just been a huge personal growth. I think because there was a lot about myself that I did not realize was within me. I worked in a corporate job where there was a lot of red tape, and you're an entrepreneur. There's not a lot of there's really no red tape anywhere.
You try to cut through it anyway.
You're trying
right.
to find the loopholes and all the things. But it's been really interesting, learning about coffee, and now opening a coffee shop, just learning about how to own and open a business that has a lot more red tape, like the health department, permits, inspections, hiring, the Department of Labor, all of these things. And sometimes 90% of the time I'm am I even how am I doing this? I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I'm going about everything the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all, you just have to trust that you can figure it out, and just trust yourself. And Gwillem and I are really, he, bless him, he has a full-time job. He works 40, 45, 50 hours a week in his full-time outside of doing all of the roasting. And it's a lot, but we, our long-term focus is really that you got to risk it to get the biscuit.
That's true.
And we've always kind of just played this coffee thing as it's a no pressure sale, right? We go to the farmers markets and someone asks us questions, we'll answer it, we'll give them some information on the coffee, but we don't have to push the coffee on anyone. If they want to learn about it, great, we're here to show you and teach you about it. But it's been a no pressure sales, and that has for us been the most organic way to meet people. I can't even remember how we got connected, but it was it was like someone saw something.
Yeah.
And
How
you just
did
reached
that
out.
happen?
I reached out, and I don't remember why, but I think I saw somebody posted about you on Instagram or something, and I was like, wow, they're right in Pomfret. That's 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
We need to get coffee in our
we need
store.
coffee on the menu.
I think we
Yeah.
already had tea, and I was like, coffee's
Yeah.
a no-brainer. We drink it every day. Dylan drinks, like 2 pots
Yeah.
before I wake up.
Maybe not.
Not anymore.
Maybe like 8 cups on a regular pot of
Yeah.
coffee.
Dylan's upgraded from the 12-ounce bags to the 5-pound bags.
It's true. It's true.
Like I'll go through a bag of 12 ounces in 4 to 5 days.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy, and that's not because it's I just drink too much.
And really,
Yeah.
like, we were like, okay, we'll try it. We'll see how it goes. And it is fantastic. Like, we really do drink it every single day.
we haven't purchased any other coffee since
No.
we started buying.
A lot of people
Yep.
say you've ruined coffee.
Yeah.
And for us, that's how we've gotten all of our customers. Really, like, we have a super loyal customer in Pomfret who not only they had 2 dogs and they saw our coffee on Facebook or something and purchased it, and they've been a loyal customer ever since then. They've subscribed to our coffee subscription, and they come to like almost every single event that we go to.
Oh,
They're
nice.
That's
they're
awesome.
incredible. And like to us, that's become like our community. You
Yep.
know, like within coffee, and something like personally, they say like surround yourself with people who support and celebrate you, and like we have just found so much of that here in Connecticut, and we have our own personal like friends and support in New Hampshire, but the community here in Connecticut, just from a personal and professional standpoint, has just been like unlike anything that we've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's a positive note on the
It
state.
is,
You don't hear
yeah.
that often.
Yeah.
For us, it really has been. But
Yeah.
the entrepreneurial stuff, it's you kind of just fall into it, and then all of a sudden you're like deep in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And no longer are you in this 9 to 5 where you can check out. And I
Uh-huh.
have to remind myself a lot now that at the end of the day, I pick up my kids. I have to turn off as
Yeah.
much as I can. I can't be working
Right, don't be
on
checking
other things.
emails and
Don't check emails. Don't
That's a
work
hard
on
part for me.
With the coffee shop, it's been really difficult because there's so many moving parts all the time.
Yeah.
And things that need to be addressed, quickly. But that's something like for us, we have to be able to turn off and say, or for me, is say like, okay, I have to, be present with my family.
Yeah.
I'm not doing workday stuff anymore.
Yep. Yep. So you're not like going to bed right before you shut your eyes. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, did I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also just being honest with people like who want, maybe they need a refill of coffee, or hey, like we'd love to be able to do it. Like we have 4 markets this weekend.
Wow.
So anyone that needs a restock has to wait until next week because we have to be able to like time everything. That's another piece of
Yeah.
it. Like
Yeah.
just ordering your coffee, your labels. I realized the other day, like I need 75% of my labels, so I had to order more like Monday. Like, can I have this by Friday? Like
Yeah.
it's all those little things, and you guys know all
Yeah.
the admin work too.
Yeah.
and
Oh my God.
you just like don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
We were just having this conversation yesterday because I'm like, I can't be in the office anymore. I really
Yeah.
can't. Like, if we're gonna grow our business and we're, I like to say we're in year 6, but we're in the process of refining things to try to maximize our labor and our dollar out of each
Yeah.
crop or whatever we're doing.
Yes.
And I'm just, if I'm gonna be out weeding all day, I don't have the mental capacity to come and do anything.
No.
I want to just go inside, take a shower, and relax.
Yep.
Yep.
So we've been kind of going back and forth with, all right, we got to split up a little bit of what we're doing because the business isn't slowing down, and we're in food too.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And you're seasonal.
and we're seeing.
Yes.
Well, we
Right.
try to stay as
Right.
relevant year round, but it is still seasonal in everybody's mind.
Right.
But coffee's not.
Yeah.
Coffee's every day.
Yeah.
It's hourly, not seasonally, and I would say too, when I first started the entrepreneurial journey, I didn't know any of the laws or what am I supposed to do. The food production on this side of things is kind of vague, which is great,
Right.
but it's also like I was worried. I don't want to hurt anybody, get anybody sick. Are
Right.
there any
I wanna get in
laws?
trouble.
Like, how is it interpreted?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Can I deliver it to your house? In fact, I couldn't find anything about delivery, so I just did it.
Yeah.
But there were many times where I was like, nervous, worried, and I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure the food was clean.
Yeah.
And in my last house, I had a little kitchen, you know, and I would harvest all the produce and set up my whole kitchen sterilized with towels, and just, it was such a freaking process just to like get you a box of lettuce.
I know, isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then someone comes by and like, I don't want to pay you $4. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'll take 3 because I need it. You know,
Yeah,
like,
right, exactly.
all right, just go to my 2.
I guess the good way I think of it, it's like if we were doing something wrong, and I'm sure with you too, you would know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Someone's going to tell you.
Someone's
at
gonna
some
tell you.
time.
no news
Yeah.
is good news
Right.
most
That's right.
of the time.
Yeah, we're always
Ask
looking.
for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing with the when you're trying to grow your business, which we have really tried to like hone in this year, is you can't be in the day-to-day stuff 24/7 by
Yeah.
yourself. And
No.
there's this for me there was like a fear of giving up some work
Yeah.
because I have a little bit of a control
Me too.
you know,
We understand.
personality.
Yeah.
For
Where
sure.
if I want to be able to do it, and
Yeah.
I want to be able to do it the way that I want to do it, and I don't want someone else doing it, and that will
Yeah.
hold you back so much. And so this year, our goal, when the coffee shop became, an opportunity, we said, okay, in 2024, we really need to hire a social media manager to help us grow the brand, spread awareness, take that off my plate. And as scary as it is, I mean, we have our social media manager, Marcy, works 10 hours a week for us, which at first was scary because we're like, okay, now someone's relying on 10 hours a week to pay for, whatever. They're doing the work.
Their
but they're,
stuff,
but
yeah.
they're expecting 10 hours of pay a week. And in the beginning of the year is not our busy season
Right.
from a roasting perspective. All of our markets really start in the fall, and all of the money for the markets is paid for in the beginning of the year, right? So we have like over $5,000 just in market fees for
my
this year, and
God.
market fees and all the coffee
Yeah.
in
Right.
supplies, not including the actual beans. That's just like the bags and
Labels.
the tent and the this and the that and all that stuff, and that.
Yeah.
And that's like being like very modest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because does that even include your costs for employees?
No.
No.
So this year we decided we're gonna hire a social media manager. So she manages 99% of our social media. She's put flyers together for us. She's gonna start helping me with our website and our e-commerce, our email marketing and stuff like that. And then for the markets, we're like, look, if we're gonna grow our markets, we need to hire staff for
Right.
that, and that's
Yeah.
scary.
You can't
'cause
be in
you're
two
giving
places
up-
at once.
You
Yeah.
can't, and we have
Yeah.
2 kids, and our kids have really. They haven't suffered. I mean, they have an amazing life.
Nobody
Yes.
said that, Brittany.
They have an amazing life.
Nobody
With the mom
said
guilt.
that.
The mom-
Yeah.
They're not suffering.
I swear.
I swear, they need for nothing, right? But from a parent perspective, when we're at markets every weekend and we have to get a
Right.
babysitter, like it tugs at you a little bit, and so, we were like, okay, if we want to grow and we want to be able to get into places that we want to be and expand, then we need to let the reins go. AKA,
Right.
Will was like, Brittany, you have to let go a little
Aw.
bit. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And he's like, it's fine. And we hired 2 really amazing market employees, and they have just like given me so much more relief. I got
Yeah.
to work with them this weekend. Gwillem has been doing all the like training and stuff for the markets while I'm working with the coffee shop stuff, and so I got to work with them this weekend, and I just feel a sense of relief knowing that like they're passionate about
Right.
the coffee,
Yeah.
but they're passionate about meeting people and like in that customer interaction, because the coffee will sell itself
Right.
anyway. Like
Once they try
you can
it.
try it. If you don't like it, we do a 100% guarantee you can get your money back if you don't like the coffee. It's never been returned.
I was gonna say I've never heard that policy, but I can't imagine that
It's
someone.
never been utilized.
Yeah.
But we do have it. So the coffee is an easy sell, but really for us, it was like, what does that customer interaction look like? Because that to us, even with the coffee shop, is really the most important thing.
Yeah.
What does
Right.
that customer service look like?
Yep.
And so with them, they both have just done a great job. So they'll be doing most of our markets this year. We'll be doing some as well, because we don't want to completely get out of the market game, because
Yeah.
they're a lot of fun and we
Yeah.
like to meet people. But that was how we could do both and grow both businesses, because not only now are we entrepreneurs in general, we own 2 businesses, and a lot of people think that they're the same, and they are, but they're similar.
Right.
You know, the coffee shop is its own business,
Right.
and the coffee roasting company is its own business. So we have 2 totally separate businesses and operations
Right.
that work together.
Right.
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 Extensions of
The
one
coffee
another.
shop is going to buy the coffee beans
Right.
from
Right.
the coffee roasting company, but they're 2 separate businesses.
Okay.
2 separate
And have 2
liability
different
segments.
overheads,
And
2 different labor,
everything
all
is
that.
very separate.
That's
Yeah.
true. On a
Yeah.
side note, is the goal to be able to roast at the new coffee shop, or are you going to keep roasting where you are?
Currently, we're going to keep roasting where we are. The
Yeah.
goal is to open this coffee shop, and then we're going to take a little vacation next year.
Deserve it.
Okay.
Deserve
Yeah.
it.
And then our second goal is to open a second location with a roastery included. So it'll be a coffee shop and a roasting facility. So you can actually see
Yeah.
the roasting process.
I was going to say that would be so cool.
Yeah.
I'd go there for a
There
field
was,
trip.
I think it's called Flight Coffee, and I think it's in Bedford, New Hampshire. I think that's the name of it, and if it's not, then I'm totally wrong. But there is a coffee shop in Bedford, New Hampshire that has a setup like that. And I remember when I was working remote, I would go to all the coffee shops, and that coffee shop had their roasting facility within their cafe, and you could be drinking your cup of coffee that you just ordered and then like watch them roast their coffee.
Yeah.
And it was just really
What
cool.
right. It stood
Yeah.
out, obviously, you know. Mhm.
It's like a brewery when you see the big, like the room in the back where they're making the beer.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Is that what you-
exactly. Yeah, and then it just creates like a different. It's a whole other conversation. It's an extension of the conversation that we've been having for years with people, and showing them, and then being able to offer roasting
Right.
classes.
Oh,
You know,
roasting
and
classes.
roasting
Right, for home
classes
roasters and stuff.
Home roasters. We started off on a very tiny roaster. Like you could fit it on this table here.
Sure.
It's like a
Sure.
huggy, and you roasted. We did 2.5 years, almost 3 years on this little tiny roaster, and we did. I mean, like almost like we'd pull all-nighters roasting for these big markets.
Yeah.
Oh my
for
God.
a long time, until we finally said, all right, we need to buy a bigger roaster. And now we're at the point where we really need a larger roaster, but we can't invest in that at the moment. But we opening a roastery and having something of that magnitude will also open up opportunities
Right.
from a commercial standpoint, you know, because before the coffee shop came to fruition, it really, our goal for this year was getting into more of the commercial, offering it to restaurants so they can sell, specialty coffee and stand out from their competitors. Like, you
Yeah.
have a great, breakfast place. What makes you different from this breakfast place?
Right.
Oh, you also sell like
Local coffee.
Like
local
good coffee.
specialty coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting into like those kind of spaces was our goal for this year, but that's kind of taking a step back for a future year.
Maybe I'm a little bit of a stickler here, but I don't understand why there's coffee shops that don't have local coffee or their own coffee that they're serving. Like we went to
Yeah.
one a couple months ago, and I wasn't expecting like their coffee, but I kind of make the assumption as a consumer, like, oh, it's a coffee shop, maybe it's theirs.
Yep.
And when we went in, it was just New England's best, and it was poorly brewed, and it was an awful experience. But I'm like, why do they not source local? There's obviously a few roasters in the area.
Yeah.
Why are these small places not teaming up? Like,
It all depends on their overhead and what their finances look like too, because
Yeah.
buying from a specialty roaster is more expensive than buying from a New England I mean, and that's a whole thing too. Like, there are different types of coffee shops,
Yeah,
right?
right,
There's
yeah.
specialty coffee shops, and then there's non-specialty coffee shops.
Mm.
And so there's a big difference between the two. So from a non-specialty coffee shop, you're going to get probably more commodity coffee beans.
Yeah.
They're not really focused on the specialty part of the coffee. They're focused on, their business is the coffee shop, not
Right.
the coffee roasting and like
Yeah.
the coffee experience completely.
well, it confuses the consumer, and they
Or it
charge a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking it probably
You know?
it probably only confuses the consumer because when you think coffee shop, it's either you're thinking large scale like Dunkin', Starbucks, all that, and if you're not, then you must be a small specialty
Right.
coffee shop.
Right.
But that's not necessarily totally
it's
true.
not the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there are any local coffee shops that
There we go.
would like to try out some specialty coffee,
Mm-hmm.
we do offer an affordable, option for working with local. I mean, like, our whole thing is like we want to be local, we want to be community focused.
Yeah.
And so, and for us, like we've been given opportunities where people, have, purchased our coffee and in larger sums where they can, get it for a little bit less because they do purchase more of it. So, I mean, we want to work with people where they're at. So if they say, hey, we can only afford X amount, maybe you offer it as like, your special of the week is this
Yeah.
coffee.
Ooh,
And
yep.
if you get good
That's a
feedback
great
on it,
idea.
and it's great. You want to charge a little bit more because it's specialty coffee, you can.
Yeah, well, that's
know?
what I mean. Like the
But you
prices.
don't also want
Great
to, if
idea.
you're drowning out the coffee
Yeah.
in syrups and sugars and cream, which is fine. A lot of people like their coffee that way. Then it doesn't make sense to buy expensive coffee because
That's
you can't
true.
taste it
Yeah.
if you're
I guess
adding a
that's
ton of
valid.
flavors to it.
Yeah.
Um,
We did recently talk to a customer that had gone to a local place that doesn't do local coffee at all, and they got a couple of lattes, and they were like $8 a latte, and they
a
were
lot.
so bad they threw them out.
Yeah.
They threw them out,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
it's like, well, why are you a coffee shop?
Yeah.
Like, how can you be a coffee shop if
Yeah.
people are like, this coffee sucks?
I
know.
think we had talked about this, and maybe giving them a little bit of feedback in a not aggressive way. Because I think as a business, that was something we had
yeah.
talked about before. The deeper you get into business, the more you have to be able to take feedback.
Oh,
Yeah,
And of course, immediately, because we all have egos, the first thing you want to do is get defensive and feel offended by it. But if there's any truth, that's something I've learned in the past couple of years. If there's any truth to it, you're actually getting a valuable, gift
You are.
when somebody gives you feedback. Because if there's any truth and you can improve, then yeah, still screw that person. But
Right. Yeah.
but that helps you out in the long run. So
Well, and with that, I think, if you get a cup of coffee, and if you were to get a cup of coffee from us and it wasn't good, and it wasn't what you expected, and we're not going to be the cheapest place on the block.
Right.
We're not going to be selling $8 lattes, but I want the feedback.
Right.
And I
Right.
think any business owner would, but again, like you said, it's how you approach them, because it's still,
Yeah.
we're entrepreneurs and you put
Yeah.
a lot of time and effort into these things, and maybe they don't understand, maybe the ratio was wrong on their coffee, and what
Yeah.
they offered, or maybe who knows?
Could have been a fluke.
I think it's really important to give feedback appropriately, but
Yeah.
also, don't go on Facebook and bash
Oh,
these
yeah.
man,
businesses.
yeah,
one
that's-
star,
that.
never
Yeah.
go here. That's awful.
And you can, if you've had multiple experiences or
Yeah.
something like morally really didn't sit right with you and something happened, then okay, sure. But
Yeah.
and I think in that perspective too, when you're looking at pricing, like that's a big thing. I've been like delaying the pricing on our coffee shop because I'm really diving into the numbers, and that was a really amazing tool that I got from the Seattle Barista Academy was a spreadsheet that breaks down all of your costs, right? You're putting in how much of this you're buying, what the price is, what it is per ounce, and what it breaks down to literally pennies and cents for the cups or the coffee beans or the milk or the like based off of your ratio. So if we're putting in 8 ounces of milk or whatever with 2 pumps of vanilla simple syrup and the coffee on top, the espresso, like what does that price look like? Now we purchased compostable cups that are more expensive than most of the cups around here.
Yeah.
Add that into the price. So making sure that your price fits what you need from a like price perspective, and your percentages make sense for you.
Right.
Because if you're just throwing out willy-nilly numbers, it's going to, one, turn a lot of people away. 2, you want to make sure your numbers are as accurate as possible so that when you do need to increase, because guess what? Coffee gets more expensive year over year from a purchasing perspective. All of your supplies go up. If you're starting at $8 for a latte, you can't go up much higher than that. And then guess
No.
what? When the prices go up, you're going to be screwed. So if there is anyone out there listening that is struggling or is unsure about their numbers, I'm not a numbers person by day at all. Like numbers are not, but spreadsheets I can kind of figure out. And Gwilm's really good at that, so he's really helped me out a lot. But we do have a spreadsheet that if someone ever wanted to, get some information on that, I'd be, willing to share that with them, because we want everyone to be successful. And if, they're struggling with that or they're not sure, we would be happy to share that information and show them so that their pricing can, reflect what's competitive and doesn't steer people away from a price perspective, but then now also a taste perspective. And if you don't have those two things right, and unless your customer service is literally top 10, you might have some returning customers, but with the taste not being great and it being expensive, you probably are going to lose a lot of business.
Right.
Yeah.
And we hate to see people go out of business, because how hard it is and how much work goes into it. And everyone wants to feed their families.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Everyone's trying to make. They don't want to live that corporate life where you're told when you can and can't take time off, or you're chained to a desk.
When you're supposed to eat lunch,
you're just a number.
We're not in school. Come on, there's definitely something there, because if you guys are able to roast it and do everything that you guys are doing for less than what they're doing, I'm just like, there's a formula problem. Our pricing is definitely better because we roast it, so we get a better margin on that perspective. But 90% of I'd even say 95% of coffee shops don't roast their own coffee. They buy it from either another local roaster, which you really should buy from local roasters. Right.
But if not, if you're buying from, New England's Best or, Pete's Coffee, they're pretty good commodity coffee.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but if you're buying from some of those, just making sure that you're pricing yourself appropriately.
And good on you for being able to, or being willing to help other coffeepreneurs in this industry. We're going to call it that. I don't know.
Oh, we need a sticker with that on.
Coffeepreneur. Yeah. I think any entrepreneur is a coffeepreneur. We'll keep running on this stuff. But yeah, I mean, good on you, because there's no real competition. Like I said, everyone's just trying to feed their family. And coffee's how big of an industry? What are we talking for annual numbers?
Oh my gosh, coffee's not going away.
It's insane.
Well, it's a couple shops.
We're not all switching to tea tomorrow. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah. No. And I actually read something recently. The Founding Fathers drank coffee in lieu of the tea protesting because coffee was cheaper.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Find that out.
Yeah, it's and that's exactly. You don't want to see anyone fail. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's competitive. There's a handful of local roasters between, Connecticut and like the bordering Massachusetts, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, they're your competition. I'm like, well, no, we all do something different. Right. Like they might be a coffee roaster, we're a coffee roaster, but their coffee is different from our coffee.
Right.
Their setup is different. What they're looking to offer is different. And, when you have options, people want options.
Right.
We may not be everyone's cup of tea, and that is, or cup of, we may not be everyone's cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But, so it leaves opportunity for people to have options.
Yeah.
Where Dylan always says, other farms, like thinking of farmers, are not our competition. The grocery store is our competition. So, other coffee roasters and small businesses are not your competition either.
No, the Dunkin' Donuts are because they have a drive-through and it's a little more convenient and the prices are better. But it's like, you're putting together a business model where even the cups make sense.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's true, and it's even like with the coffee shop. There's another local coffee shop, diagonal from us, and everyone's concerned about like a competition standpoint. I'm not concerned about it because they're putting in a Starbucks drive-through down the street.
Oh, yeah.
What?
That's what I'm concerned about.
Owen Bell.
Because, they're putting one near in Killingly, a second Starbucks that's a drive-through, and we're not a drive-through. And obviously, we'll have mobile order at some point. We'll probably open up and then add the mobile order in there. But it's still not a drive-through.
Right.
And that convenient, 40% of coffee purchases in the U.S. right now are from drive-throughs and mobile orders.
Okay.
40%.
40%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a huge market. And when you think about it, I have kids. I don't ever want to get them out of the car unless I have to. I do not want to get out. And we're across
especially early in the morning when you got places to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to find other ways to get people to step away from what's like super convenient as a drive-through like Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts and say, hey, take the extra couple take the extra 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Come into our coffee shop, grab a cup of coffee.
It's habits
Right.
too,
And it's
you
a
know.
habit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We see it with people when they buy food. You know, like even though we're convenient, we drop it off at your house. They're like, I don't understand. What do you mean? I go and pick out my food. And it's
Right.
like, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine, but
Yeah.
just consider it. So
Right.
it's always just that little change in people's every day to day. That's
Yep.
tough.
You gotta get them hooked.
You got to get them
Yeah.
hooked. You got to get them hooked. We definitely have some serious fans that have been with us the whole time.
Yeah.
You know.
Two
and-
Dogs is definitely our local coffee dealer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
We're your local caffeine dealer.
Yeah. Diggle Farm runs on Two Dogs. Cass, did you have anything else you wanted to talk to Brittany about?
No, I think I hit all the bullet points. This was
Yeah.
a great conversation. I learned so much about coffee.
Seriously,
I
same.
seriously can't wait for the shop to open. Do
Mm-hmm.
we have
Either.
a potential date?
Well, we've had multiple reaches out to. Well, I've reached out to the health department a couple times, but they're super busy. They're short staffed too.
Don't let
so-
them fool you. No, they're not. It's the government.
Yeah,
It's just slow.
I know it is. It is just slow. So hopefully, I'm really hoping soon. We're ready to open. We just need the the
The
green
approval.
light.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I'm like ready to just dive right in.
Yeah.
I want to be open for the summer. I mean, everyone's gonna be
It's
out
that
of school
time,
soon,
yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and just like but it's okay. It's been a slow process, but once we're open, I'm like,
Right.
I can't wait. So hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of this month.
Yes. Okay. Right. And a year from now, you'll be looking back, and it'll be like, "Wow, we've been open forever now."
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
We'll have to have you back at the end of the season to see how your
If I'm
first
still alive.
how your
Yeah.
first 6 months in the store went, and then how you did with all the
Uh-huh.
friggin' markets you
I
guys are
know,
doing. How many did you
Yes.
sign up for?
We have 75 markets so far from June to October.
Holy
Wow.
smokes. Okay.
A lot.
What's
So
that? 4 months?
So
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Jesus.
We might have bit off a little bit more than we can chew, but that's just us. We're fast and furious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
that's just like
understand.
we were like, you know what? If we're going all in, like and we really wanted a full-time spot with Putnam and Coventry because we
Yeah.
had really great experiences at both of those markets as guest vendors last year, and we lucked out that we got a spot full-time in Putnam, which is right down the street, and then in Coventry full-time, which brings in a lot of new business for us. We have a lot of subscription
Right.
customers from our Coventry market from last year. So, and then we added in Foster Farmers Market, which is right over the border in Foster, Rhode Island at Shady Acres Diner. That's
right,
on Thursday. So
okay.
that's brand new to us. I've never been to their markets. I've never done their markets. So that one is a brand new one to us. And then we've sprinkled in a handful of artisan markets throughout the year.
okay.
Wow.
So for those that are not, local to the area and won't be able to make it out right away to the shop, you got all these different markets that you can check them out at.
Come to Dago Farm.
Yeah.
Do you have a list on your website of where people can find you at these
We
markets?
do, yeah. I just
Oh,
added a
okay.
partnerships page.
Perfect. Look
at
So it has your logo on there and some information about each of the
thank
places
you.
that we work with. If
Oh,
they're,
cool. Yeah.
locally owned and stuff like that. So on our website on twodogscoffeeco.com, you can go to our partnerships page, see where you can purchase it locally. If you're not able to go to any of the markets or you want to also support other local businesses. And then all of our events are listed on our website as well.
Wonderful.
Wow. That's fantastic.
And if you do, I just want to add this
Yeah.
too. If you do love our coffee, you can subscribe and you get a 15% off discount to subscribe, and you get a monthly delivery of however many bags of your choice every single month, either hand delivered myself,
Yes.
might be someone else in the future, but hand delivered
Yeah.
by myself locally for free, or you can have it shipped anywhere around the continental U.S.
All right.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. I didn't know.
Perfect.
You got the reach.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, it was good talking with you today, Brittany.
Yes, thank you so
and
much for having me.
we're definitely going to have to do a follow-up episode, see
Oh,
what
yeah.
you made
yeah.
out over this season. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Simply Growing Food Podcast. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.